All right, it's a Monday, and you know what better day to be talking about the economy, business, your money, and all of that. I guess it will help you know how to plug those loopholes as far as your finances are concerned during the week.
I agree. Do serious business first.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so now we're turning to our other story. The heavy exposure to oil and gas sector by banks, which constituted about 70% of government revenues and 90% of all exports, is a big burden most banks are contending with since the oil price crash.
Well, since then, some deposit money banks are now reluctant to grant new credit facilities because of rising non-performing loans. Last year, the CBN directed banks to publish the names of their debtors in a move it believed would spur them to pay up, but even that plan didn't work. In 2011, AMCON had to intervene in 22 banks during the crisis in the financial sector. But 3 banks were irredeemable and had to be bridged. AMCON injected 679 billion naira into the bridge banks to meet the minimum capital base of 25 billion naira and the minimum capital adequacy ratio of 15%. Again, Nigerian banks are grappling with rising bad loans and an economy that has been in a recession. Non-performing loans, or NPLs, have hit an all-time high and now threatens the survival of some banks. All right, joining us now is a managing consultant, Deem Forensic Services, Richard Ojo, and also joining us from Abuja is former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Obadiah Melafia. Good morning and thanks for joining us, gentlemen. Let me begin with you, former Deputy Governor of the CBN. Yes, it's always a delight to have you on the show. Now, the NDIC Chairman, Umar Ibrahim, at House Committee hearing recently said that, that insider abuses are at a sorry state in the banking industry. Is that really at the root of the problem we're having right now with the increase in bad debts in the banking sector? Shed more light for us.
Well, I have considerable regards for the boss of the NDIC, but I wouldn't say it is the only factor. Obviously, it would be a very critical factor, but it's not the only one. I mean, last year was a particularly difficult one for the country. Negative growth, hyperinflation. And actually a negative current account and generally a poor macroeconomic outlook. So that really affected the banking sector and affected, of course, the real sector and the capacity of obligors to be able to live up to their loan obligations. So a lot of factors were involved, and I would say yes, corporate governance issues are part of it, but not necessarily the only one.
All right, let's, having said that, Obadiah, well, thank you. We will get back to you. Please hang on. Let's get the other perspective now from Richard Ojo, a forensic accountant here with us. A big source of worry now for investors and, people who use the bank, so to speak. How bad really is the situation? I mean, another way of asking, what's the status of these non-performing loans?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning again. You see, the issue of rising bad debt in the Nigerian bank is, to me, it's a laughable matter.
Why is it?
Because there is no debt anywhere. Yes, I will explain that to you. Are you
saying that sarcastically? Or?
You see, it's just all lies from banks and CBN to deceive Nigerians and government.
So what's the problem?
You see, if there is any debt at all, if there is any at all, which I don't agree with, it is the situation where, the bank have put themselves in collaboration with CBN. That is just the truth of the matter. I am not aware that any customer is owing any bank in Nigeria.
Okay, so you're on the same page then with the NDIC chairman, who says it has to do with, you know, insider trading and all kinds of things going on the part of the bank directors. 40% of the bad debts in Nigeria right now, in Nigerian banks, generated from within the banking system.
Let me explain to you.
Yeah.
You see, these debts are not real. They are fictitious.
Oh, now you confuse us more.
Yes, they are fictitious.
I'm sure that's not your aim then, but you know, enlighten us further now. The banks are obviously in trouble, so people are saying that there's need for some intervention now. Tell us what we have some idea of what the problem is now, but tell us what needs to be done at this point from your own view.
First and foremost, let me explain this to you.
Yes, please.
The debt banks are talking about, alleging against the customer. You see, like I said, when a customer approach bank for facility, and when they lend money to them, there is a contract between that bank and the customer.
Yeah.
And there is a contract. The formation of that contract is the offer letter that contains terms and conditions of that facility, of that contract. So many things are contained there. The rate of interest agreed with the customer, some other charges, fee, like management fee, processing fee, and so on and so forth. But the issue is that banks never abide with this. There is always breach of contract because they know the customers are ignorant.
On the side of the banks, right?
Exactly. For instance, they agree 18%, 19%, 20, 22% with the customer. But you find out at the end of the day and you discover that they are charging up to like 35%, 40%. They agree management fee maybe 1%. You discover they are charging 3% because they know the customers will not know. Because they don't know how the only thing you can only see on the face of a statement of account when you pick one is the amount. The rate of interest is not there.
With this kind of interest rate that you talk about, up to 35% in many cases, customers who actually get money from the banks are not even able to pay back. Is that why we now have this bad loans that AMCON, many instances, has to come in?
Stylishly, bank has recouped their money.
Okay.
By these excess and illegal bank charges.
But it's obviously not leaving the banks better for it because the banks are in trouble. So where's the money going to?
That is what I said. It is the situation they have put themselves. We should be asking them where the money is going to. Okay. The money is not in the hand of customer. All
right. Melafia now. Mr. Melafia, thank you very much. I'm sure you must have been following the conversation we're having right here in the studio. So many questions have cropped up, more questions have cropped up. What's the status of these non-performing loans from your own analysis?
Sorry, I didn't quite get your question.
What's the status of these non-performing loans? How did these banks get so many loans that are obviously not yielding any profit for either end?
Well, we've been down this road before, and as you know, it happened in '89, it happened around '99, it happened 2009, 2010, and we're now having that problem again. It appears to be a circle. Now, I agree with the last speaker that there are challenges, especially in the manner in which the banks offer credit. When I was a student in England.
My apologies, please. Let's take a break, and then, of course, we'll allow you to educate us more on this. It's time to take that break now. Stay with us. Right, you're welcome back if you're just joining us. It's TVC Breakfast, and we're looking at the bad debts in Nigerian banks. Things seem to be looking up in a negative way for the debt profile of Nigerian banks. We had somewhere around 7 trillion naira And it's unbelievable to hear that about 40% of that is a result of,
insider dealings.
Insider dealings.
So to speak.
That's amazing. But our guest in the studio, Richard Ojo, who's a forensic accountant, says there are really no debts out there with the banks. So we're yet to understand exactly what he means. Obadiah Melafia is in Abuja. He's a former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Let me remain with you, Obadiah. You were trying to make a point there, but let me just chip this in. 7 trillion or 7.40 trillion or so of that's a debt profile in Nigerian banks right now, and 40% of that, we're told, is a result of insider trading on the part of bank directors. Is this a failure of, is regulatory failure, as it were?
Well, in economics, you don't say this is just the reason. There are always a whole host of reasons. And as I was saying before the commercial break, that in the United Kingdom and other places, especially when some of us were students, if you walked into Barclays, which was a popular students' bank, or anybody for that matter, they normally printed out. As you walk into the bank, you made the teller, the print exactly how much they charge. No hidden charges. The interest rate, the charges, everything is printed up front. So if you were borrowing so much, you knew exactly how much you were going to pay, depending on whether it's flexible or fixed interest rate, and all the charges. Unfortunately, it is not the same with Nigerian banks. They can change it after 1 month, after 3 months. They can change the rate. They will give all kinds of very fake reasons. And there are all sorts of hidden charges that they surprise people with. And of course, that is a contributory factor. And of course, also, there are clear regulations regarding how much directors can take as loans. And I am not sure that these rules are being respected. There are all sorts of fronts that can take loans. As you know, in the past, one of the managing directors of a bank, was using even her housemaid to collect huge amounts of loans that the housemaid did not actually know about. So, and what surprises me really and disappoints me is the dollarization aspect. The banks in the United Kingdom will give most of their loans in pound sterling. The European banks will give most of their loans in euros. Nigeria is one of the countries in an odd situation whereby nearly 50% of exposure of some of the most systemically important banks in foreign currency, in FX. And that worries me a lot. I mean, were these genuine loans, or were there simply money taken for round-tripping purposes? I would say going forward, the regulators should put a limit on FX exposure of commercial banks. We have a legal tender currency in this country. It is called the Naira. For God's sake, we should show respect to this currency. We should use it the basis of loans and other transactions. There are very clear regulations. Why should a Nigerian bank be giving up to 50% of its loans in dollars? It is not acceptable, and there should be a limit to that. And I would say that for some of the big item loans, the Central Monetary Authority must give approval. And if it is going to directors, such people should be punished rather severely.
All right. All right, Obadiah, we can always, count on you giving us, some really, really juicy information, having worked in the Apex Bank, talking about the CBN. But let's share your suggestions, your concerns now with Richard here with us. So the former CBN Deputy Governor is saying let's begin to respect our Naira more. Let's begin to beam the searchlight, so to speak, now on the workings of these banks now, because there is apparently a lot of rot in the system. To what extent do you agree with all these suggestions?
Well, I actually agree with him. But I was trying to explain to you how this issue of rising debt, what bank called debt, come about. Let me explain that to you. Let me share more light on it. You see, when the customer approach a bank for facility and it is being granted, it is not a debt. They call it facility. Either it is a term loan or overdraft. Okay. It is not a debt at that moment. It is called facility. That is during the pendency of the contract. And there is always a duration. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be 1 year or more than that. Within that period, the issue of debt have never arisen. It is called facility. And where that expires, bank is entitled to charge interest on facility based on what they agree with the customer. But once it expires, if it is for 1 year, after 1 year, if there is any outstanding at all, it crystallizes into debt. It is no more a facility. And bank cannot charge interest on debt. What bank is entitled to is damages. They call in for their money. If the customer refuses to pay, they approach a court of competent jurisdiction to mitigate their damages. But Nigerian banks will never do that.
After all, there's a collateral, right?
Yeah, sure. In the first place. But Nigerian banks will never do that. They turn that facility to a bottomless pit,
whereby they
continue to charge interest till Jesus Christ come. That is wrong.
And they have continued to get away with it.
And that is what they are calling debt.
How come?
Because Nigerians are not aware of this.
So now when AMCON comes in now and takes over some of these banks because of the huge debt profile and all of that, how is it that AMCON still covers this interest rate on debts that shouldn't be in the first place?
Even there is no debt anywhere for AMCON to take over. I've been saying it, I will continue to say it.
So are you saying that you don't feel there is need for an AMCON intervention then?
You see, government is just wasting money on AMCON, in my own view. Because many of the so-called debts that AMCONs are taking over, they are not actually debts.
Because these are, from your own side now, these are debts now that were accrued within the system itself. But again, I have been holding on to one particular thing from your end now. Yes. It says that it's up to the prospective customer now to know basic information about how these things work in the banking system. So what should we take home now at the end of the day? If I need a loan now, apparently there's so much that I need to, investigate now to monitor my account, so to speak now. So how would you advise a prospective customer?
Actually, law protects customers. But unfortunately, many of the customers are not aware of this. But how we advise, there is nothing wrong in a customer taking a facility to support his or her business. But as a result of their ignorance, banks are capitalizing on that. You see, when you approach your bank for facility, there is always an agreement contained in the offer letter that states the terms and conditions of that.
All right.
But unfortunately, though the CBN monetary policy mandates banks to state on the face of the statement of account the rate of COT and the rate of interest. But if you pick up any statement of account from any bank in Nigeria, you won't see this there. The only thing you will see there is the amount. For the customer not to be aware of the rate applied by the bank. So I will advise every customer to be on top of their statement of account. Engage just not only accountants.
And check for those hidden charges.
Forensic accountants.
I'm almost thinking, Obadiah may laugh here. I'm sure you heard what Richard said here. These hidden charges that you find at banks, and then sometimes for the customers who go to ATMs, to withdraw money. In most cases, you hear, well, there's no money to be paid. Even when you go to the counter, sometimes the banks will tell you, look, network is bad, so you cannot withdraw money. Are these cover-ups for some of these huge debts that are in the banking sector, where you have, credits actually far outweighing total deposit? What does this mean, really?
Perhaps in some cases, I wouldn't put too much mileage on that. I mean, you know how our situation is. Electricity is spasmodic. All sorts of infrastructural challenges, technological challenges. So there are likely to be interruptions, and simply sometimes just the distribution of currency in various branches of MTNs. So some of those problems cannot be overlooked. But look, we are talking about non-performing loans.
Yes.
We're not necessarily talking about the small creditor. And actually, a lot of those people pay their loans. That is the surprising thing. Most SMEs, ask anybody who knows these things, they actually pay. The rate of repayment is very, very high. It is some of the big people and some of the big companies that they will simply say, even if they have the money, they will simply say, well, we're not paying. We'll wait for you in court. And they have money to hire very big lawyers, and they will continue to waste the time of the banks and so on and so forth. So these are all part of the challenges.
Okay.
But what worries me a lot also is the insider abuses. We need to address that, and for directors, they have no business incurring loans in dollars. What for? And we need to discourage it. And to be honest with you, even for the oil companies, which took the highest of these loans, I think almost 30%, 28.9% of the loans went to, the whole loan portfolio of the industry went to oil and gas sector. And about 50% of these, in some cases, were in dollars. So I think Nigerian banks should learn to borrow, to lend to people in Naira. And they can help them to arrange to translate the money into dollars, but they have no business giving people loan in FX.
Okay, but I'm Lafia. Just hold on for us. We'll have to go on a quick break. And of course, Richard Ojo right here in the studio. Let's quickly take a break and return.
Thank you very much for staying with TVC Breakfast. Now, let's return to our topic on the rising debt profile of many banks now due to an influx of non-performing loans. Obadiah Melafia is with us from Abuja, and Richard Ojo is also here in Lagos. But let's remain with Obadiah for a little further now before we take this over to Richard. Richard, again, I was even talking about, his doubt on the intervention of AMCON now on these banks that are now in dire straits. Obadiah, how do you react? What form of intervention would you want AMCON to do now? We know how far they went back in 2011 when a number of banks now, had to be saved, so to speak, for the funds there. But what do you want AMCON to do now, Obadiah?
Well, we need to be careful here. You don't want to create a situation whereby you are providing incentives for irresponsible behavior. AMCON would need to do due diligence, find out the origin, nature, extent, and general structure of the non-performing loans. And let's be very even clear about definitions. What is a non-performing loan in this situation? And the methodology for valuation of such non-performing loans, find out the responsibility of directors in this case. If you find that, there was insider abuses, then necessary action will need to be taken. You don't want to create a perverse incentive in which banks behave irresponsibly in the knowledge that they will be bailed out tomorrow. That should not be encouraged. And some of the rescue measures should also have bitter pills, because you don't want to incentivize bad behavior and insider abuses. That is one aspect. The second aspect is the whole, prudential regulatory environment. There is need to upscale the prudential regulations in order to ensure that the right thing is done, and that actions are taken appropriately to ensure that bad behavior is discouraged. And also, our capital markets are not very sophisticated, but it is important that we have a capital market structure that provides a market for bad loans that happens in other countries. I'm not sure if it is the government necessarily to do this, because AMCON, for example, is a government agency, but we need a private sector driven market for bad debt. There's nothing wrong with that. It is just for the banks to now discount and sell and repackage and sell these bad loans to private companies who will invest in them, and it will be their task now to go ahead and try to pull these monies back. And there's securitization. It's a technique that has worked very well in the advanced industrial economies. I know we may not have the people with the skills and the experience to be able to do that, but it is not a hopeless situation. Bold action can be taken.
All right. Mr. Obadiah Melafia, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, thank you so much for your insights. I wish I had enough time to ask you what the implications are for the financial sector and, of course, the economy as a whole if depositors lose confidence in the banking sector. But that's a question I'd like Richard to address.
Can you rephrase the question?
Yes, what are the implications for the financial sector and the economy as a whole if depositors don't have confidence in the banking sector?
It's very simple. The economy will collapse. And people are losing confidence in the financial institution now. Most importantly, the banks.
Interesting, because like Ngozi said, you come to the banks for a loan and then you get refused. That appears to be the tide now, since these banks now don't even have enough.
They can't.
So what options do we have now, to get funds to run businesses and for other needs?
You see, I think the solution is on CBN. I will explain. CBN should start regulating. Now, CBN is not regulating banks. It's the banks that are regulating CBN, in my own view.
That's the tail wagging the dog.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they should start regulating these banks. If they have been doing that, or if they start doing that, banks will not find themselves in this mess.
What kind of regulations are we talking about? I mean, Melafia talked about, stricter measures and all of that. And pertaining to the issue of bank directors, should they even be precluded from taking loans from the banks where they actually have interest or they're on the board?
There are provisions in the in the BOVIA on that. I think CBN should ensure that banks abide with this. They are really violating it. There are provisions in the BOVIA for that already.
All right, Richard Ojo, well, we do hope now that all this nuggets that have been dropped from your end and from Obadiah's end in Abuja, now customers will be the better for it. Richard Ojo, a forensic accountant, thank you very much for speaking with us on TVC Breakfast.
You're welcome.